Welcome back to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two best friends recap romance novels while swooning, snarking, and reveling in amazing world building.
Gonna love what we love, do it out loud. Stack our shelves with the clinches out. Shout it from the rooftop, can you hear the sound? Yeah. Live your best life, love it out loud. Love it out loud.
Hey HBs! It's the first week of our new format experiment, and I hope you come along with us as we explore this new frontier. This is part one of The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Bannen. Part two will be in your feed tomorrow. If you're currently a member of our Patreon, you are getting parts 1 and 2 on the same day, today, without network ads. And with this transition, we're evolving our Patreon offerings as well. So if you're a member of the Consent Boner tier and up by this Wednesday, September 11th at noon Eastern, you will be grandfathered in with your current benefits plus ad-free episodes. After that, our $5 and $10 tiers are going to be getting a makeover, and we're changing to a mix and match system that gives you more freedom to choose which benefits are important to you. This Friday, patrons can also look forward to a quickie bonus episode on the third book in the Immortals After Dark series, No Rest for the Wicked. That's Caterin the Cold and Sebastian the Vampire. All right, we're going to dive into part one of The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Bannen. Make sure to tune in tomorrow as well for the ATA. Okay. Hey, Sabrina.
Hi, Melody. How are you?
Scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to punch Bannen in her beautiful face? Is it high? Mine is high. Mine's high. And it's a loving punch, listener. This is a loving punch because she's just like too good at her job.
I was going to say, I feel like punch is a strong reaction, but also it's not strong enough. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry. According to the panicked texts we were sending, we were lobbing back and forth. Yeah, it's punch level. Sorry. Have you looked
metaphorically
at the panicked all caps texts we were lobbing back and forth, Sabrina? I have not felt like this since the last time I can remember feeling like this is reading the new Camelot series by Sierra Simone. Whatever the King book, the third book, I was sitting on my kitchen floor crying and panic texting Jenny Nordback, telling her to fucking reassure me this is a romance, god damn it. And that Sierra Simone would not actually do this to me as I was finishing the book.
That's how I feel
exactly
when I read Kennedy Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I have felt that way with Theodora Taylor, but she has the decency to do it for like a page and a half. And not 4 chapters.
Okay, no, I Raise You, Lore by Lily Mayne. It is literally...
I don't know that I've read that.
It is like 700 pages and like 300 pages of that book. Like, you know that I have a Swiss cheese memory, and the fact that I was able to whip the name of the book out of my asshole just off the top of my head, I was like... reading that book, and we hit a certain point, and sorry, like spoilers, but like Melody, when I tell you, I was like, I trust Lily Mayne.
Right? I trust you.
She would not do this to us on the 7th book of the fucking series, right? Like, she's not going to suddenly be like, JK, this isn't a romance series, right?
She's proved to us that she knows what a romance is already.
This is honestly such a book drama on topic conversation to be having, because right now the internet, there's yet another author who marketed their love story.
Oh no.
Their tragic love story.
Oh no.
As a romance. And
that'll get the community all frothy.
It will. Like capital R romance. And now, of course, there's just discourse all over the internet again about it's not a capital R romance.
Right.
If one of the MCs dies at the end of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that happens in the far off future in a romance, capital R romance. We know eventually mortals will die, right?
Yeah.
But not here, not in our neighborhood.
Guess what, authors? Your characters in your head, that character can die 10 minutes after the book ends. As far as your brain is concerned, that's fine.
That's none of my business.
Don't fucking tell me about it. Don't put it on the page.
No. No. Just to illustrate this, Michael was playing video games in the next room. Like the volume was up, the whole deal, and still he stopped what he was doing because I couldn't cry quietly enough.
Melody, when you texted me that, I was wrong. Listener,
I did a mean thing to her.
Wait, this is the most egregious part of this whole thing. Hang on.
You set yourself up for this.
I'm open. How the fuck did I set myself up for this?
Well,
listener, I'm about to fucking read you our text exchange, okay?
Please start. No. Please start from you telling me, is this the perfect book? Question mark.
Don't worry. I am, because that's the proof that I did not request this. This was unsolicited abuse.
You implied you finished the book. That's what you implied by, is this the perfect book? Why would I assume you were halfway through the book when you said, is it a perfect book?
Hang on. No, Melody, I was getting a little excited. When I sent you that, I was like 10% into the book.
Stop it right now!
Okay, listener. So I messaged Melody on Monday. Okay, today is Friday.
Yeah.
Monday, I said, all caps, is this a perfect book? Question mark. I can't wait to scream about this with you. And then
that
Tuesday,
implies you know exactly what's going on.
Hang on.
Everything is toast, and you're good to go.
Future disclaimer, that is not what that means. It means that I'm a little overly excited because I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. Because there have been times, oh my God, okay, let me finish this conversation and then I'm going to tell you about this one time. And then Tuesday morning, she says, starting at this AM, the world is already so cool. I responded, I know. And then...
Doesn't that sound very knowledgeable, listener? Doesn't that sound very completionist?
I would never have made that assumption about you, Melody.
I'm never going to again.
You better not. So we ended up like moving recording around a little bit, blah, blah, blah. And so instead of finishing the book Tuesday, I had some other stuff. And so I was like, I'm going to take my time with it tomorrow night instead of tonight, because I was going to have to not like speed read, but like move. I was going to have to book it a little bit, right?
You have to motor.
And so I was like, I'm going to hold off. I was at about 50% of this book. Okay?
She thought to herself.
50% I was in this book. Okay? Melody messages me Tuesday night.
Sabrina, did I message you or did I flail at you?
It was a message, but it was a flail, okay?
It was a
because that night at 8:20 p.m., she goes, Megan, all caps, Megan Bannen better make this fucking right. And then it continues. True Love's Kiss better wake. By the way, this is spoilers. Get ready for the end of the episode, listener.
Wait, that was the start of my rant?
Megan Bannen better make this fucking right. True love's kiss better wake this fucker up. This is bullshit. I will light every sailcloth on fire. Sabrina, I better be crying for no reason. Chekhov's fucking funeral package, and I did not Sherlock Holmes it at all. If you text, by the way, this is all caps. If you texted me perfect book before you were done and then kept mum about a third act final answer death, I swear to every goddess I will never forgive you. And I said... What? With like 6 question marks, and she said,
and then I said,
oh, because wait, you were typing this before I'd even responded, and Mel says, Sabrina, if you're sorting books right now, I swear I will purple nurple you from here. And I said, I'm 50% in ! Because I was so distraught and freaking out.
You couldn't even muster an exclamation point.
And then Mel says, no, you're not. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, well, fuck. And I said, what happens? And she says, I don't know yet. And I said, Melody, God damn it, I'm finishing it tomorrow. Oh my God, OMG. I think I have this suspicion in my notes. And then
I went
dead
silent from there.
I went to silent.
I Homer Simpson into the bush.
You did. Listener. And then of course, oh my God, listener, so now I knew something terrible was coming. And so like every little thing that happened, I was like, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is it now? Is it now? And then when it did happen, I was like, oh, I knew that was, I called that, like I Sherlock Holmes the hell out of it. Like I knew that was exactly, like there were so many, I'll tell you about it, Mal, because I was already going to tell you about it because I felt like the most Sherlocky Holmesiest motherfucker in the world. But
nice. Well, and then out of nowhere at some point, Sabrina then texted me, all caps, what the fuck, Melody? What the fuck? I'm crying. This is awful. Rationally, I know this is a fucking romance, and so there's going to be an HEA, but irrationally, I'm losing my fucking mind right now. And I was like, I know! My partner literally left the room to check on me because of how inconsolable I sounded and was, for the record.
And then I said, well, Melody asked where I was, and I said, I'm finished now. Just finished tidying my notes, but keyboard smashed. And yeah, that was it. That was the end of our text conversation.
That's where we are right now.
We keep our text conversations very minimal so that y'all get our live, interactions.
Normally, we don't text at all. Like, that's how big a flail this was.
Hang on. So I have come to realize we have some habits, okay? We don't text at all unless we either
love the book or hate the book.
Absolutely adored the book because we're like, oh my God, I can't wait to fucking talk about this. Like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Or if we hated it, it's like, I'm so fucking angry right now. Yeah. And if we've started that book, then it's like, yeah. Except when you did that about Dark Lover, and I was like, yeah, I know.
And Sabrina was like, whimsy.
The birth of whimsying.
Okay, we have wonderful patrons to shout out, and then we're going to get into book, okay?
Yes.
We just have to get into book. Okay, so... Hey, thank you to everybody who's part of the Patreon, and if you're considering it, let a bitch know. We've got a lot of exclusive content over there, and then author hangs and all the business. So, welcome, and thank you to Madison M. and Devin.
To Taylor and Abby O.
Abby C. and Kim D.V.
Nora W. and Lucy.
Julia D.K. and Kathy T.
Rice W. and Sierra.
Yay!
Thank you. We love you. We hope you enjoy. Lots of content on there. We actually just went through and figured out how many episodes are on Patreon, and it's 225, and that's not including live hang recordings and stuff. That's just episodes.
That's just bonus content. Yeah. And I think a good I don't know, I'd have to go back, but I think like a good 150 or so at the bare minimum are me and Aaron. And then from there, it's like you and I and me and other people, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like Naeem and I recapped a couple of reality shows that were really fun. Yeah, we do a bunch of stuff over there. So anyway.
All right, Mel, let's fucking hop into it.
So we meet Mercy Birdsall. And she's from a family of undertakers. And she's currently sort of pinch hitting for her dad because he had a heart attack like a few months ago. So she's been running the family undertaking business until her younger brother graduates from undertaking school and takes over, because the undertakers is called Birdsall and Sons.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also in this world specifically, undertaking goes to the sun historically.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the world is pretty darn patriarchal.
Yes. In the most random places, too, right? Like, so many things about this world are so progressive. And then all of a sudden they're like, undertaking goes to the sons.
Yeah. Well, I actually really liked that because not necessarily the patriarchal portion of it, but I was thinking about this as I was reading this book, because like one of my favorite parts about it is that queerness is just the norm. Queerness is like regular stuff. Nobody has any issues with it. Nobody has issues with same-sex relationships. Nobody blinks about it. And I was thinking like, yeah, if you're going to create your own fantasy world, why not just bake in that, like, people are equal, Love is love.
I occasionally have this where I read, like, a sci-fi that is not set, like, it's an alternate universe, or, like, a fantasy or something, like, stuff that's set in, like, basically an alternate universe of some kind, or a fantasy universe. And then there's bigotry. Yeah. And it's not for plot reasons, right? It doesn't add to the story. It's not like a pivotal part. It's just racist and queerphobic. And I'm like, why is that necessary? And I'm like,
why though?
That says a lot about you, my friend.
Well, it says a lot about how baked in all the bullshit is, that a lot of people don't question it. And like that makes sense on its own level, but it's still sad. Anyway. So she's been undertaking for her dad, and in this world, undertaking is incredibly important because they are like very connected to the gods, and like they sort of have proof because they live amongst demigods, and so they have proof that like at least some of the gods exist and are real or were real. And so when they're doing things like, it's sort of like Nordic in tradition where everybody gets a funeral boat, and a lot of times they end up on a funeral pyre, and you like salt the bodies and you sail the salt sea, and it's like a whole thing. But all of that is incredibly tangible. I don't understand the keys. I'm having a hard time with like what's mystical about the keys and what's not, Because everybody gets a birth key and a death key. Yeah.
And wait, they get a death key.
No, I'm sorry.
It's not
they get
a key.
A birth
it's
key
a
and like this is what you should do with my body.
Like an ID
key.
tag, yeah. Basically, this is who I am. I think it is still called a key. But like the religion essentially in this world was so interesting. And one of my favorite things about this book is that it was so critical and intrinsic to the story, right? Like the religion was so important, but it still didn't feel forced. Like it made sense for it to be so talked about in this book. Because like essentially it's a completely different fantasy religion, but it's organized religion. And I always clock stuff like that because I have a lot of organized religious trauma. And so I always clock it. And when I first realized, there's going to be a lot of like organized religion in this, I was like, okay, deep breath. And then it wasn't a problem at all.
Frankly, I want to live in this world just to adopt their curses. Like, there's one of the gods is the mother of sorrows. And so when the sister's in labor at some point in the book, she's like, mother of fucking sorrows. And Zeddy, the brother at some point, his go-to curse is God's tits and testicles. Like, that is the best.
I mean,
that's the best.
There's nobody stopping you You
it's
know?
true. God's tits and testicles.
I
is what
was
I'm gonna
thinking
start
that. I've been
saying.
thinking that in a couple of different books that I've read lately where there were phrases that are very world specific. And
Yeah.
I'm like, God, how do I make
I
that
just
a
want
thing?
them.
Right?
Yoink.
I'm just going to put that in my vernacular. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kindly. So, yeah, Undertaking. To give you a little bit more context, this world is, I don't know, I don't remember what it's called, but she lives in Bushong, which is Bushong. It's an island, and she lives specifically in the city Eternity. There's another land called Tanria, where you can only get there through certain portals. Or
It's nested though. It's like it's in the middle of the island, and so it's nested inside the island. But you can only get there through like portals that go through this like mist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't it, I think that is where they put the old gods, because there's old gods and new gods. So it's basically the land of the old gods when the new gods took over.
And can I just say, Megan Bannen, congratulations on this device. Like, good work on the device that makes it so that it's not just completely exposition telling us about your world, because the hero gets an apprentice. And so in like chapter 3 or 4, they do Tanria 101, and we get the entire download on the history, the religion, all the business, like the what's dangerous, what's not, why, how it works. We get all of that in like one conversation between the hero and his like adorable apprentice.
Hang on. Yes, I agree with you. I have it in my notes that I love that. But there is a part I herbst because I'm a terrible person. And it is when she goes to the church, and it is a literal like 6-page wall of text that is the describing the history of the old gods and the new gods in detail. I don't know if it was different over audio, but like I started reading it and I was like, I feel like I'm reading a history text, but like it was interesting. Yeah. But like I did go back and reread it after the book because I just herbs the shit out of it. I saw that it was like 6 pages of italics and I was like, well, swipe. Because I wasn't in, like, at that point, there was too much going on. I wanted to, like, be in the story.
You were trying to figure out the lay of the land. Yeah. So anyway, she's the Undertaker right now. She's the acting Undertaker. And technically, her dad is supposed to be running the office section of it because they sort of switched roles.
He's so bad. That's not his strength.
That's not his thing. And so she's basically running the entire thing. And that is sort of her role in her family, too. They lost her mom when she was really young. And so as the eldest, she sort of helped. 17. She helped raise the younger ones, too. And so it's automatic for her to be like, is there a gap? I'll fill it. And it's sort of like central to her being in this story. She was
definitely adultified young.
Yeah, she was parentified hard.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
And ultimately, one of the big conflicts in this book is that she loves Undertaking.
Yeah.
She freaking loves it.
And her family doesn't understand. They think that she's just filling the gap where there is one. And that is a fair assumption for them to make because one of the wrinkles is that she always talked about going and doing something else when she was running the office of the Undertaker. But since she started, she actually, builds the boats that the bodies get put into to, get sent to their relatives to sail across the salt sea or whatever. And so that's one of her favorite things in the entire world is, the smell of the wood. And she loses herself in, the motion of the work and the honor that it is to her of being there in a person's final time, their final voyage, doing that service for them is really beautiful and important to her. And so her family is still operating under the assumption that she wants to move on because that's all she talked about when she was the office manager, not understanding that things have fundamentally changed for her when she started actually doing the Undertaking side of it.
So this is something I had questions about, and you just answered them because that's exactly what I was. I was confused about when it was that she realized, Undertaking is for me, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
It's
so
beautiful.
Cute.
And it's really interesting because there's also this sort of subplot of doing work as a passion and then sort of like the soulless corporatized version of the same work. Because there's like a chain of undertakers that are really big and, they're doing patents on ways to embalm people and they price gouge like crazy, but they're very convenient. And like, I think they're sort of like the Amazon of undertaking in this world.
That's exactly what it is. They're the Amazon and she's the ripped bodice, Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the biggest ways that they get bodies now, because other than people coming in and buying funeral packages from them, is that the federal government of wherever Bouchon is decided that when people start entering Tanria, because that only became available to people like 25 years ago, they figured out how to make the portals that go into this mystical land. Once people started doing that to like mine or, cut the wool off of sheeps. What?
Okay, listener, this was such a specific thing. And 90% of you probably aren't going to know what I'm talking about at all. In this world, there is one dude who knows how to make portals that are stable and good and like a proper portal. And he's the one who does all of the
He's a government contractor.
Well, and it is specific. Well, he is. But what it reminded me of is this XKCD webcomic that I saw one time where it's like this giant, like crazy thing of stuff all stacked up, blah, blah, blah. And it's the entire internet. And it's like one little thing holding the entire thing up and keeping it from collapsing. And it's like one random dude who keeps up this one tiny library that is the only reason the internet works and has kept updating it. And that's all I could think of because like that's just that one guy, right? Just that one person who is the reason that any of this works at all. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because people have started pirating the portals, like the technology, but in the audiobook, the male narrator kept on saying pirating. And it was very funny to me the whole time. Anyway.
Well, I mostly read this book. I eyeball read books that I love, right? Like I don't process as well auditorily. And so if it's a book that I realize, I need to eyeball read this. And so I started this on audio and kind of like highlighting. And then I realized, this is a book that needs to be eyeball read. The narrator for Hart Ralston.
Yeah.
I am going to reread this book.
He's delicious.
To listen to it in audio.
His voice is incredible.
Oh my God. The first chapter is from his point of view. And he started talking and I was like, oh shit.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Here we are.
So guess what rabbit hole I'm going down now? That hole is a narrator.
Okay, so he is a warden. And
marshal.
One of the reasons, you're right. He's a marshal. He's a Tanrian marshal. And that came about because when people started entering Tanria, they would die and then all of a sudden become these reanimated corpses. And nobody really knows why or like how, but they know that you gotta poke that appendix. That's where the soul resides.
Because that's where the soul resides in this world.
I love it so hard. And like people who have their appendix burst, they have to get like a tattoo where they put their soul somehow. It's like a whole thing.
And like to be a Tanrian marshal, it seems like you either have to be a demigod or you have to be somebody who has a burst appendix. So this was a little confusing to me because it seemed like in this world to be a Tanrian marshal, you either had to be a demigod or you had to have a burst appendix so you couldn't become a drudge. But then later in the book, we find out somebody is like, kill me so that I don't become a drudge.
He says, burst my appendix because he's already going to die. but he's like, poke my appendix
but,
and make sure that nobody can take my body over. So, no, my understanding was that there's just a higher percentage of demigods and people with burst appendices. I don't really know why, because he makes the comment that, like, yeah, marshals that have burst appendixes are like, they're usually showboats and just messes, you know, like they just take their lives in their hands all the time. And then demigods, I think, because they're a tiny bit more durable, they're like less scared of becoming marshals.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But like Twyla and Frank, and you know I'm going to be reading The Undermining of Twyla and Frank.
I am also going to be reading
They're both humans. Bill was a human. So like they're
that's
definitely
what I was saying
are.
is like, oh, I didn't realize that Twyla and Frank were human.
I think so. That was my understanding. We might find out differently in their book, but I'm not sure. Because, like, what are they going to do? It's dragons, right? Okay, no, we can't do that. So
yeah, this is good. We're going to end up on this is going to be a Patreon. There's going to be a Patreon.
There's going to be a Patreon.
This world is too fantastic. This is a good example of a fucking author where I just want to sit down with them.
Yeah.
For like a 5-hour. Like, I don't want to ask questions. The fact that you came up with this world means that you have so much stuff about it that is not on page that you know that you desperately want to talk about, but there's no reason for you to, like, it doesn't need to be in the book. Mm-hmm. I just want to sit here and listen to you ramble.
Tell us all the random shit about the world.
Yeah.
The histories that had to be edited out.
All of the little things.
The gods that were on the drawing board and then got cut.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
or
I
the
want
gods,
all of it.
The gods that exist but don't show up on page. Like, I just want to sit here and listen. This is a good example of it. And then The Shades of Sin by Colette Rose.
Yeah.
You know, like, those are two worlds that I'm just like, I literally cannot get enough of this.
Yeah.
Just
tell me everything.
Take your special interest and ramble about it for a while at me. So anyway.
I'll sit here.
Let's fucking get to plot, because otherwise this is going to be an 18-part episode.
Yeah. So once the marshals kill a drudge and burst and like poke their appendix and make it so the soul will leak out and no souls can fit in there anymore, they bring the bodies to either the Undertaker that's listed on their ID tags if they already have a prepaid funeral package, or if they don't have keys, there are a select number of Undertakers that take what they call indigent bodies. And those are people without identification and without funeral packages.
Even in a fantasy land, you can't get away from bureaucracy. You know?
I know. So
I love a bureaucracy in a fantasy world.
So Birdsall and Son is one of those Undertakers, along with the big corporate, monster and a few other mom and pop shops. Mm-hmm. And so Hart, 4 years ago, he walked into Birdsall and Son for the first time because that's the first time he got a prepaid ID tag to go there. And immediately, toxic masculinity ruins a first impression again. Because, he walks in, it's 2 weeks after his dog died. And, this dog was his soulmate up until this point. And when he walks in to Birdsall and Son, there's nobody at the front counter, but there is Leonard, Mercy's beautiful, wonderful dog that shouldn't be on the furniture, but is. And he gets a little misty-eyed, petting Leonard. And then she comes up behind him and he's like, oh, I can't let anybody see me crying or weak. Oh no, I've got to. So he gets extra gruff at her. Go ahead.
I found the quote because of course I have a quote from that scene. This happens way later, not way later, but it happens about 25% of the book where we see this memory, but he's discombobulated. And so it's super awkward between them two, but he thinks that she's beautiful. She's wearing this yellow dress. She's got this beautiful hair. She's got these cute red glasses. She's tall.
She's buxom and how dare somebody be such a ray of sunshine, especially when they're constantly surrounded by death. How dare?
Yes. And so he's kind of a dick, and she immediately bucks up and is kind of a dick back to him. And then it leads to years and years of them hating each other she says to him in that first interaction, she says, well, feel free to never come back again. And he, lady, I can't tell you how much I don't want to come back here, but the government has other plans. So if you don't want to see me again, feel free to stop fleecing the suckers who come to Tanria to seek their fortunes only to get turned into reanimated corpses. And then she propped her fists on those admittedly glorious hips.
Oh, it's parenthetical, y'all. It's the best.
Feel free to maybe not chop up those corpses into tiny bits and pieces before my father has to send them home to their grieving families. And he says, your father is free to join the Tanrian Marshals anytime he likes if he thinks he can do a better job. And so are you. And she says, you know what? I'm not going to waste one more second of my life on you. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Marshall. And he said in his head, he goes, he was a waste of her life, not her time, her life. Seconds ago, he had merely disliked her. Now he loathed her from the depths of his soul. And so, y'all, this is an enemies to lovers.
And it's like a long-standing enemy situation. So this is like 4 years later, and we see him drop off a body. She calls him Heartache because his name is Hartley, but everybody calls him Hart, H-A-R-T. But she calls him Heartache, and then he calls her Merciless. And it's kind of the best.
Oh my gosh. And like it's known that they hate everybody knows that they hate each other. And this time he walks in and she realizes it's him, and she literally is like, oh, it's you.
And he's like, nobody else works here.
Yeah. And oh my God, it's so funny because he hates her so much, but in his head, he is
she's so sexy,
horny for her. And he can't stop thinking about like what her ass would feel like in his hands. And he's like, and she's so tall that like we'd be able to kiss super easily. She'd just have to get up on her tiptoes and I wouldn't have to like bend over and break my back.
And she thinks about him throughout the early parts of this book. Like, he is so perfectly built, and like his demigod eyes are so boundless. And since she's 6 foot, she thinks to herself, like, and it would be really nice to have a dance partner who wasn't a couple of inches shorter than her. And he's 6'9".
Oh my God.
So like,
oh my God.
That
when
would
Mel,
be so easy.
I was already so into Hart Ralston, and then I found out he was 6'9", and I was like, oh.
Well, and I love that she was 6 foot, because one of the things that he says is like, I won't be afraid of breaking her, like, ever. That's really nice.
Yeah, so then they're firing back and forth at each other, and he's dropping off a drudge body. No, he's dropping off somebody, because every time somebody has a key for her, and like
he
Birds
gets
All
so
and Sons,
mad.
he's like, I can't believe that I have to fucking go there.
But one of the reasons when he has an indigent body, one of the reasons he goes there and he doesn't just like go to the back where the bodies get dropped off is because he loves Leonard and he just like wants to pet the pooch for a minute. So he goes into the front office to check in before then going all the way back around just to see this dog. Ooh.
So they're firing back and forth at each other. And then this turns into a thing because she calls him a pathetically friendless loser. And then as he's walking away, he acknowledges him to himself that he does bring bodies to this specific Undertaker to see a dog. So yes, I am in fact a pathetically friendless loser. Oh my God. And then after he drops off this body, he goes back to work, and his boss / old partner / friend that he has a fucked up broken relationship with also basically calls him a pathetically friendless loser, just not in so many words.
Yeah, almost like, we need to get you a partner. A, because it's dangerous out there, but B, because you need like a human
interaction.
You. Yeah. Any kind of human interaction is good.
Yeah, and then we see one of my favorite side characters in this entire book. We meet the Equimaris, which is basically a slimy water horse.
Ooh,
named Salt Liquor.
Salt Liquor. They have kelp manes, and they've got like webbed feet that go like every time they. Oh, I love it so much.
It was beautiful. But his name's Salt Liquor, and they hate each other. Hart and this Equimaris hate each other.
I mean, he's basically that 3-year-old gelding Gunner that I pulled onto my head. You know, he's exactly
Mhm.
that horse. He's young.
Yeah.
He's full of spit and vinegar. What is that phrase?
Piss and vinegar.
He's just, there we go. And then he's ready to just like run off to any source of water he can possibly get. And so he like abandons people quite a bit. He abandons marshals quite a bit and they have to like chase him around.
Yeah. So we find out that his mentor is dead. His mother is also dead. He doesn't know his godfather. He doesn't know who it is either. And he used to write letters.
His god dad told his mom that his name was Jeff. Yeah. That's all she knows.
Yeah, beautiful. And so he writes, this is so fucking sad. This book is so sad in so many ways. So he writes letters to his dead mentor and his dead mom.
Yeah.
And then
or he
today,
used to.
Used
and
to.
Like, he hasn't in a long time.
Mm-hmm. And today
And the crazy thing, I'm so sorry, Sabrina. I'm so sorry. I keep on cutting you off, and I'm very sorry about it. I might continue, though, because I'm the worst, and I'm just so excited.
Mel, I'm going to also be cutting you off because...
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So the nutty thing about this book, I feel, is that he is writing these letters to his dead mom and dead mentor, knowing that the letters get to them because their entire postal service is run by these beings called Nimkillums, which is like a possessed animal of some sort that's immortal and like used to be the messengers of literal gods and now just like does regular ass postal stuff for mortals. And so he knows that the letters are getting to them in the afterlife, but they can never write back. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that like really gets him.
Oh, that makes it even sadder because that means that it's somewhere in the afterlife they stopped receiving letters.
They stopped getting letters. That's my understanding. That's how I understood it. If I'm wrong, I didn't
understand that. That's not how I took it. I thought he was just doing it basically as like journaling because I used to do that. I would write letters to nobody essentially because I'm not good at journaling. I'm better at like telling, and so I would essentially write letters. So that's kind of how I took that. But anyway,
I paid my dad's cell phone bill for a while just so I could leave him messages. So there's that.
Melody.
You know, we all deal with stuff in different ways.
Oh my God.
I could hear his voice message, leave, his voice every time he said, leave me a message. And then I could just like talk to him about my day and maybe cry a little bit and feel connected to him. I know.
Oh my God. Oh shit.
Anyway, I'm going to take over. So while Sabrina recovers, because I am also crying. Anyway, so he then is like, I have no friends. So he's like, I'm just going to take a shot in the dark. And he writes a letter to a friend. And he says, like, I was basically called a dickwad today by an equimaris, no less. And I realized that, like, in real life, I'm prickly and awful and people don't like me. But I'm hoping that, like, there is somebody out there who will write back. And, like, if you exist, I'm so glad, basically.
Well, and, like, specifically, he said, like, one of the things that he said, I have no self-control. I did highlight every letter in this book.
I'm glad.
He said, I feel more strongly the presence of an undeniable truth that is always there, lurking, hovering, waiting for me around every bend in the road. Loneliness.
Yeah.
There, I said it. Technically, I wrote it, but committing it to ink makes it truer. I'm lonely. Oh.
Yeah.
Hard.
And then he gives it to a Nimkillum, or he puts it in a Nimkillum box, thinking it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, God. This was also sad from this letter. He said, because he's talking about this woman that hates him, and that's what made him like confront this loneliness. And he says, maybe there's a strange comfort in knowing that at least one person feels something for me, even if that feeling could best be described as hate.
Yeah. And he says, I hope you don't have a person in your life like that, but if you do, maybe you'll understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sends it off, and spoiler alert, it gets delivered to Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what? This isn't addressed to me. And then Nimkillam looks at it and he's like, yeah, it is. It's absolutely addressed to you. And then later on, another Nimkillam describes it as being addressed by Hart to Hart. And he goes, I am Hart. And he's like, no, with the E, dumbass. Like, it's addressed by
oh my God.
the thump, the thump.
There are two Nimkillams in this book, right? So Mercy's Nimkillam is named Horatio, and he is a very prim, proper, very demure, very proper, very cutesy Horatio. And
he's an owl.
He is delightful. And then the one that Hart has, his name is Basarius, and he is such a grouchy asshole, and I love him. Can I tell you, Mel, I ship Horatio and Basarius so fucking hard.
They've got to be a couple, right? Now that they work together very closely at the end of the book?
Absolutely.
Like, they have to be.
And just to give you a quick plot thing, just because this is important for the rest of the book, Zeddy, so we're in her point of view, and she gets that letter, she reads the letter, blah, 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 but then Zeddy gets home from school, and
That's
fucking
her younger
useless.
brother.
Yeah, fucking useless at being an Undertaker, and she finds out he failed out in his first year and got a degree in like Andarian philosophy or something like that instead, and that he doesn't want to be an Undertaker. And then it turns into this whole thing that basically, I'm just going to kind of put this out here now so that we don't get bogged down with it later.
Yeah.
Cunningham's puts out a buyout offer for Birdsall and Sons, and her dad is contemplating it because he was like, I would basically at one point he says, like, this is after he finds out that Zeddy doesn't want it. I would never have sold it for Zeddy, but now that Zeddy doesn't want it, I'm probably going to sell, because what the hell else am I supposed to do? And like, internally,
it's heartbreaking. Well, no, because in that conversation, she says the business isn't worth saving for me, but it is for Zeddy.
She doesn't say that out loud.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I thought she did, because then he says, you've been burdened enough with it.
Oh shit. You're right. She does say it out loud. Yeah, but her big speech happens later.
Not yet. No, yeah. So, okay, but here's the thing. These siblings are all together. There's Lillian, Mercy, and Zeddy. Zeddy doesn't want to be an Undertaker, but he's also very scared to tell his dad. And so he promises to help Mercy with, like, the boats and other, like, non-body undertaking stuff for a while if she will give him time to, like, tell his dad on his own. And then Lillian is pregnant and doesn't want the dad or Zeddy to know until she's, like, further along, just in case. Oh, and then the dad doesn't want Mercy to tell either of the other kids that there is this buyout offer. And so Mercy is just inundated with these secrets that she finds to be such a burden, because she knows that it would change the decisions of everyone else if they were to know the truth. But she also doesn't want to lose the business. And so the more that Zeddy is going to cosplay as the future Undertaker, the more she gets time to try and save Birdsall and Son somehow. So now he gets an apprentice at his Marshall situation.
Penrose Duckers.
Oh my God. And he's 19, and he is sincere, and he is adorable, and he does have a burst appendix, which is a red flag for Hart, but he's like, I guess we can do this. And under a lot of duress, Hart decides to hire him. And one of, like, the final straws for him is that Alma takes him out into the hallway and she says, think about how you felt about Bill. You could be this kid's Bill. And he's like, oh shit, this changes everything. And he ends up taking him out to Tanria for the first time, because drudges can get out of Tanria. And as soon as the body starts getting, like, really decayed, they will kill someone in order to, like, get a new body. But what drudges don't know is that souls can only move into bodies within the confines of Tanria. So if they get out into the like normal population, they'll kill people, but they won't be able to actually inhabit those bodies, and they'll just keep on going on a rampage. So it's very rare that drudges end up getting out, but that's one of the marshal's jobs, is to find the drudges in Tanria, skewer those appendixes, and get the bodies out so that there are less drudges that can be created. Okay, also, what I loved, one of the things that this book made me like yearn for is like a plausible, tangible, necessary reason for everybody to be a little bit old-timey sometimes. You know, like in Tanria, none of the technology that they have outside of it works. And so that's why they have to ride equimarises. Like the cars that they have, the auto ducks, don't work there. And like you have to cook over a fire and you have to get down to bare bones when you're in Tanria. And I think it's maybe just because I miss riding horses so much lately, but I really longed for it. Ooh. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of my favorite things about this book is that the lost soul thing, there are so many questions throughout the book that are brought up by characters where they're like, we don't understand this, we don't understand that, blah, 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 blah. And I was like,
yeah,
man, I really hope that we end up with like a legitimately good explanation for why. And then we did.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of a loose end in this book where like this book was so tidy in the sense that like all of the major questions that I really had get fucking answered.
Well, and that's why I'm like, if we're still following marshals in the second book, what are the marshals gonna do now? And I think it's the one loose end that doesn't get tied up, which is dragons. Okay? I don't know.
I suspect the rest of the series, the dragons come up too.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So now they end up bringing the body to Birdsall and Son, like the first drudge that they end up killing together.
By the way, By the way, she does write him back before that happens.
That's right. Oh my God,
she writes him back, and she is basically like a friend to him.
She says, I'm also lonely.
Well, I wouldn't describe myself as lonely, but lately I've been feeling isolated, stuck. Right. And yet I like the things I do and the people I meet, whereas you appear to be alone as well as lonely. And I love that because I also very heavily differentiate between alone and lonely.
Same.
Right? And, it was just beautiful.
Yeah. And so she's like, I'll keep writing to you and I'll be your friend. What?
Specifically in this letter, she says,
yes.
And this was a check that got cashed because she says, while I am not alone per se, there are times when I feel like I'm at a party standing against the wall when I'd rather be dancing. Everyone else is cutting a rug, completely unaware that I'm there. Or worse, they don't want to dance with me. And I'm a pretty good dancer, let me tell you.
That's right.
This is important, is in his letter back to her, he says, it would surprise many people to learn that I am, in fact, an excellent dancer. If I ever find you holding up a wall at a party, I promise to dance with you. And I was like,
as he's writing it, he's like, am I flirting? Is this flirting? Is it weird? Well, I'm never going to meet this person anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm never going to know who this person is, so it doesn't matter. Listener, it does. It does. It does.
That check got cashed. That check got cashed. We love cashed checks.
We do.
At Melody, or not. I almost said Melody and Sabrina at Heaping Bosoms.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So now he and Penn, his apprentice, have to bring this body to Birdsall and Son. And so Penn witnesses for the first time the enmity that they have for each other just from the get-go. She's had a terrible day. What's up?
Really quickly, we meet Basarius really in depth before this happens. And he's like looking at the letter. He's so excited to get this letter, right? Hart, this big old hard ass on the outside. And Basarius sees him and he's like, she must be a hot piece of ass. And Hart's like, you look like a rabbit, but you're actually a pig, aren't you?
Yeah.
And he's like, you think it, I say it. What's the difference? And then they have this like back and forth, and he's like, you're all warm and fuzzy over this girl, you big softy. And he's like, she's a friend. And he said, big gooey softy. That's what you are. You seem all tough on the outside, but you're mushy on the inside for some letter writing bird. How cute. Meanwhile, the entire time, he's just drinking whiskey out of the bottle. Basarius is, and then he tries to pull
He's
Duckers.
legendary.
He tries to pull Duckers into it. He's like, fucking adorable. Isn't he fucking adorable to Duckers? And Duckers is like, I'm not answering that.
I value my life and my job.
Yeah.
So she has had a horrible day, okay? She has been approached by the corporate nemesis about the buyout situation. He knows that Zeddy doesn't want to be an Undertaker, and so he's really pressuring her. They broke down on the side of the road, and while she was getting gas, she had to see her terrible, cheating ex-boyfriend, the deputy sheriff, who gave her a ticket because she wouldn't go out with him that night. And, like, she's hot and sweaty, and she's fucking done with the day, and then she hears this ding, ding, ding on the counter. Goes out, and it's Hart and Penn. And so she's like, the first thing she says to him is like, Heartache, I have had a terrible day. I just need you to be cool this one time.
Oh, gods. I'm having a day here, Heartache, so I'd appreciate it if you would make the barest effort at civility just this once, okay? And he says, well, specifically in his day, he says he hadn't even spoken yet, and she was already laying into him when she was the one being uncivil. Unbelievable. Well, he wasn't going to make an effort now, especially if she planned to pawn him off so she could return to some schmarmy asshole in the boat works.
Oh, yeah.
He thinks that she's fucking a dude in the boat works.
And that's why she's all sweaty and gross.
And,
he's so mad about it, and he doesn't know why.
Thanks for rolling out the red carpet, Merciless. It's an honor to be here. And she says, is that what you call civility? And he says, best I can manage under the circumstances. And then while they're talking, he thinks to himself, her shirt was unbuttoned to her sternum, and Hart had to will his eyes away from the resulting cleavage.
This is my favorite quote. Yeah, go.
That is enemy cleavage, he reminded himself.
That is enemy cleavage. I'm obsessed. So then while this is going on, Zeddy comes in, like looking, because he's cooking for the whole family now, okay? He's got this cookbook. He's looking for an ingredient. And he sees Penn for the first time. So he's in his like very, very early 20s and Penn is 19. And he looks at Penn and he's like, well, hello there. Hello. And this is the first like sniff of queerness we've gotten the whole book. And so Hart is like kind of weird about it. And
it's not the first sniff. It's not the first sniff because her dad, while they're all having dinner, that too, but her dad, while they're having dinner, is like, I just want a nice rich man to take care of Mercy. And Zeddy's like, what about me? What if I want a rich guy? And their dad says, I don't care.
Marry a whale.
If they're rich, you can marry a whale, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. As long as they've got money, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, like, okay, this is the first time that I've seen, like, it in front of Hart, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Hart gets a little weird about it, but then I realized that it's not because of the queerness at all. He says to himself, like, well, if that's the way the wind was blowing, he thought his apprentice could do a lot better than a birdsole. And I was just like, hilarious. So by the time they're, like, getting out of here, because she is fed up, and she's like, Zeddy's going to help you with the body in the back. And Zeddy's like, what am I going to do? She's like, yeah, Zed, yeah. That's what you're going to do right now. So he goes out and Duckers is supposed to follow him. Hart hands him the keys and he's like, get in the duck and like, I'll be right there. And Duckers doesn't leave though. And so he looks at, do you have the quote that he says to Mercy?
Fine. You caught me. I like your dog. Your dog is nice. You, on the other hand, and all your Undertaking ilk are a bunch of grubby opportunists on the Tanrian border trying to make a buck off other people's tragedies. And then he tells her, this is your last chance to abuse me before I leave. Going once, going twice.
And then a singular tear goes down her cheek, and she turns around and leaves the lobby.
And then he suddenly realizes, oh my God, like almost immediately after this, he's like, oh, I don't think these are seedy Undertakers at all. Like, this is just a family that cares a lot, actually. Like, this is a turning point for him where he's like, oh, Mercy Birdsall is not just some asshole.
Right. I really liked this part because one of the variables that enters into the equation for him is Zeddy coming in with the cookbook, talking about cooking dinner for the entire family. And it's just like it turns his version of them into a much more like wholesome view than he had before, because his mentor Bill gave him really, really bad feelings and impressions of Undertakers. Bill's a mess from start to finish, but he doesn't know that yet because he still hero worships him really hard. So now, as they leave, Penn is like, the fuck, dude? Why were you so mean to her? And he's like, me? I was mean. He's like, well, yeah, kinda, yeah. And then he's like, I think it's because you like her and you're afraid that if she knew you, the real you, she wouldn't like you and you wouldn't be able to handle it. And Hart is like, what? No, I couldn't possibly. Mercy Birdsall is like the bane on my existence and the worst thing to ever enter the planet. It's great. And then he's like, you need more human interaction. I can't help you though, because I've got a date. And he's going to dinner at Zeddy's house.
Zeddy's. Oh. So Penn goes on this date with Zeddy, and he actually ends up going and hanging out with Alma and Diane that night because he's like, you know what? A family dinner sounds really nice, actually. So he starts trying to patch up that relationship.
And we find out there that the crux of their conflict is Alma thinks that Bill wasn't as perfect as Hart did.
Specifically, she thinks he's a sanctimonious ass.
Yeah. Oh my God, this was rough. Because she says, like, who had no right to, like, tell you or anyone else how to live after he abandoned his wife and daughter in order to become a Tanrian marshal. This is the first time Hart has even heard about this or known that he had a family. And child. Yeah. And it's especially terrible for him because all this time he's looked at Bill as like a father figure after his god dad abandoned his mom before he was even born. And he's thinking like, what an amazing dude to like step in that way for me. And now he knows that he did it to somebody else. It's very complicating for the poor guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're starting to patch things up.
Yeah. Then we see at dinner with Zeddy because Penn is there with the whole family. And after dinner, he's telling Mercy, he's like, I think Hart likes you. I think you should give him a chance. And she's like scoffing the whole time. Also, like, let me just say, Penn, terrible friend. Right? Do not fucking, if you think I like somebody, do not fucking go to that person and be like, Sabrina,
I think they like you.
I think they like you. You should give them a chance. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I did not ask. Like, it's one thing. We've talked about it. And I do, in fact, like them. That's worse. That's more egregious. But I'm still less happy if I hate. I'm angrier if I hate that person, or even if I just think I hate that person. And you're like, you go to that person, like, I think that they like you. I think they're just pulling your pigtails on the playground. I will.
Well, Penn is right.
You.
Ultimately.
Penn is right, but ultimately.
Yeah. So he says that to Mercy, and Mercy's like, have I been reading Hart the wrong way for all of these years? And she's like, no, there's no way. But she keeps up this correspondence with this friend, and we get this like epistolary section of the book where like he tells her that he really likes like onions and garlic, and she starts the next letter with "Dear Onion Breath" or something.
Onion breath.
It's so cute. They start learning a lot more about each other.
Just importantly, as readers, we learn that there's about to be something called the Founders Day Festival, and that there's going to be dancing there. And I totally Sherlock Holmes this. Just throwing that out there.
I love it. Okay, so they are getting to know each other better, and her family finds out that she's writing to this mystery human. And her sister says, like, that's not real, though. Like, until you meet in person, until you have that connection, you're just paper dolls to each other. And it really gets Mercy thinking. So she writes him a letter saying, I think we should meet.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they go back and forth, the way, listener, that they're able to be completely vulnerable in front of each other via letter is such a beautiful addition to this book, because very early on, Hart scratches something out and starts over, and then he thinks to himself, like, fuck it. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to say exactly what I think and feel to this person
Completely
because there are no
authentic.
consequences. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he's like, I would love to, but I'm really scared you're not going to like me.
Yeah, and specifically just because this quote hit me really hard.
Yeah.
Because this is something I remind myself. So he's super nervous. He's freaking out about this letter that he just got from her. And he is talking to Basarius, and he says, what if it doesn't work out? What if we stop being friends? And Basarius says, then you can stop dicking around with letters and find a real person in real life to date. You keep asking, what if this bad thing happens or that bad thing happens? How about, what if you two hit it off? What if she's the love of your life, dumbass? He was not saying it as softly as I am right now, listener.
I love it.
What if she's the love of your life, dumbass? Thought about that? And Hart nods. And he says, then go meet her because you've... Oh, this hits harder having finished the book.
Oh.
Then go meet her because you've only got one life to live. May as well make the most of it. And he says, I may have only one life to live, but who knows how long it's going to last, to himself. Yeah. And then in his head, he says, and how much of that life are you going to spend alone, you poor, pitiful bastard?
Mm-hmm.
We have a Sebastian on our hands, listener.
We have a bit of a Sebastian, because one of Hart's like internal struggles is that as a demigod, he doesn't know whether or not he's mortal or immortal. And frankly, he's terrified of being immortal, and that makes him feel extra alone.
We find out, listener.
Oh, God.
Okay, so I didn't understand, because like I understand why I would hate to be immortal, right? Like I would, the only pro of being immortal to me is the fact that I could read every book that I could ever possibly want to read, right?
Yeah.
Like I actually get to finish all of the books that I want, and I don't instead get sad when I calculate my life expectancy and how many books I can read before the day that I die if I read a book every single day. Not that I'm saying that's a thing that I've done, you know? But also, like, I'm not saying that's not a thing that I've done.
Not that it's a thing you've actively admitted to on the podcast.
And regularly keep an eye on.
Recalculate?
Recalculate, yeah. Yeah, anyway. But I would hate being immortal, right? Because, I mean, for a lot of reasons. Some people love the idea of it. It would be horrifying, right? And so he's definitely one of those people who is not okay with the thought. And specifically, I was willing to accept that. I was willing to accept his reasoning being that, like, people die, right?
Yeah.
We find out later in the book that what scarred him about immortality is he went to a fucking circus.
Yeah.
And at the freak show, he meets a woman who's 300 years old. She's immortal. And the body doesn't stop aging.
Yikes. And that's, luckily or unfortunately for her, that's not the norm. Like, that is specifically for her. I don't think so.
Oh, thank God. I was like, that is the most horrifying thing I've ever heard in my life about immortality.
My understanding was like, that's her. That's why she's in the freak show. Otherwise, there would be like 87 million immortal.
No, because they say that immortal is not common. So like, I would bet it's like a 1 in 15 bazillion chance that you're an immortal, even if you're a demigod.
But if they're immortal at this point in history, there would probably be like 15, right? That are super, I guess that's true. Old.
But also, like, at some point, what happens? Do you just get if the body doesn't stop,
are you just dust? Do you just live as dust then?
Are you just
I don't know. It's wild. It's wild. Well,
mummified?
And later on in the book, they say that a lot of like quote unquote immortals did make it up into the stars when like the new gods put the old gods into the stars. When like the old gods were like, we're fucking sick of this. Thank you so much. We need to be gone now. They were like, okay, you're stars now. And so a lot of the immortal demigods also managed to get there. We don't know how or why. But anyway, he doesn't like the idea of being immortal.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides that, okay, I will go meet her, but they're both so cute about how scared they are about doing this. And they decide to meet at a cafe.
Well, hang on. Specifically, she's like, I'm so excited to meet you. I'll wear yellow so you'll be able to spot me easily. And he's like, I'll be there, but I won't be wearing yellow. My wardrobe is A, very limited, and B, extremely drab. You can tell me to live a little when we finally meet in person. P.S. I have mentioned that I'm terrified, right? Oh, because they're completely authentic and honest and open with each other at the letters.
Yeah. And the yellow dress is what she was wearing the day he first met her at Birdsall.
I love that the yellow dress kept coming.
I know.
Kept coming back.
I know. So this is all being planned and it's about to happen. Are there any other important parts of like plot that happen right now?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So they're off that night and he and Penn are like checked into their hotel already. And he's like, I need you to do me a favor because internally he's like, the scariest thing would be getting stood up. So he's like, go and see if there's a lady in yellow in there, please. Look in the window. And Duckers goes in and he's like, oh my God, this is the best day of my entire life. And he's like, why? What does she look like? And he says, if I told you that she looked like Mercy Birdsall, like, what would you say? And he's like, no, I don't want that. Also, listener, as they've both been reading the letters, they've been picturing each other writing them. And then, like, you know, doing a face slap on themselves.
Well, especially because at one point she makes a comment in one of her letters about bathtubs, and now he can't do anything but imagine Mercy in a bathtub. And he's like, God damn it, these letters are the one pure and true thing in my life, and Mercy can't help but come fuck this up too.
Right. And so he's like, but Mercy's pretty. And he goes, I mean, I'm sorry, sir. If you're not happy that she looks like Mercy, you're not going to be happy because she is Mercy. Oh
my God. I fucking love Penrose because that's exactly what he did, right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. So he's horrified and he starts walking away. And Penn is like, the fuck, dude? You can't just leave her in there. And he's like, I actually think I completely can, and it's none of your business. So Penn fucks off. And then he finally, because he thinks to himself, she found out it was me at some point, and now she's just been punking me this entire time. She's just making fun of me, and this is a prank, and I hate it. But then he thinks over a couple of the different lines that she wrote and like is putting it in the context of what he knows about Mercy Birdsall. And he's like, but it also could be real. And like, he doesn't want to admit to himself that he really wants it to be real. So he goes in and he walks across the restaurant and he sees her eyes getting like bigger and bigger and bigger. They go from like hope to
horror,
dread. Yeah.
And he is on brand for Hart Ralston.
Oh my God.
And he can't get a word out. He's dumbfounded. He can't speak. So he's standing over her and he can't get any words out, and he can't stop thinking about how like a part of him hopes that this is real. And then she is pissed off and tells him to leave, and he ends up sitting down anyway, and he goes right back into basically sheltered mode, right? Like his like protect himself mode, and starts being a dick right back to her.
And poking her back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and specifically because she's telling him, I'm meeting somebody here. I'm meeting a friend. And like, you cannot be here. I'm really excited to meet this friend. And so he's like, there's no part of her that could even for 1 millisecond imagine that the friend could be me. And that's worse.
And he's like dropping all these hints. He's literally quoting the letters to her. And she's like basically telling him to fuck off. She's reading a book and completely ignoring him. And then at one point, she gets sick of it and she says to him, please, if I cut you open on my prep table, I'd probably find a rapier where a heart should be and a bleak, grim, depressing novel that no one but you could possibly want to read lodged in your appendix. And he says it was as if Mercy had grabbed the blunt knife from her place setting and filleted him with it. He had come here tonight to do the right thing, only to find himself wounded and bleeding.
Oh.
And so they're sharing barbs the entire time. He's feeling gutted. It's so sad and it's awful. And he finally leaves. Yeah. And then he goes back to his hotel, and his friend, who, as it turned out, was not his friend at all, had told him he had a rapier in place of a heart. And maybe she was right. It was stabbing him in his bleak, grim, depressing novel of a soul.
Oh.
Hart.
Yikes.
Oh.
So now in 2 different chapters, we get their next week experiences. Mm-hmm. And like for Mercy, she has a bad week. She's thinking to herself, like, of course, my friend will write to me and let me know why he couldn't make it. Of course, he'll do that. And then he doesn't. And it says like every day she fights with a new person. She's like, I fought with Lillian. And then this day I fought with Zeddy over something. And then this day I blew up at my dad over blah, blah, blah. And then she's going to pay her ticket. And because it says like that day she sort of fought with Nathan, her ex-boyfriend. So she goes to pay that stupid ticket that he gave her for not going to dinner with him. He's there and he's like, I didn't file the paperwork.
The audacity.
I know. He's like, let's go to coffee. And she's like, I mean, okay. Yeah. All right.
Listener, earlier in the book, we found out that they broke up because very vaguely it had to do with
he cheated on her.
This is when we find out we found out.
No, we knew that.
We knew that, just not at the first time. Anyway, sorry.
We find out that not only did he cheat on her, but that he was mad at her for thinking she needs to take care of her dad after he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And like he thought that he should be more important.
My favorite part of this is he apologizes to her. He's like, this is a long time coming, but I'm sorry for lying. And she's like, you mean cheating on me? And then she accepts his apology, which, you know what? She's a big person. Good for her. And he has the audacity to be like, oh my God, we're back together. We're dating again. And like, what the fuck?
I'll pick you up at 7 for Founders Day. 7 for Founders Day?
What
and
drugs
listener,
is this man on? Because
I know, but it does say that there's a big part of her that is tempted to be like, okay, like, sure, because in her mind, at least recently, especially with all the things that her family's been saying to her, she's been watching her chances of like having a family of her own sort of ride off into the distance. And there's no tangible way for her to do that. And so Nathan is sort of offering her this opportunity to go back to that. But then she thinks about what her friend said in his letters and how he thinks that she deserves a friend that's so much more special and good than he is. And she thinks that she might deserve a man that thinks she's special, period. And this is kind of a new thought for her. Like, wait a second. Nathan didn't ask me how I've been one time. He's just been talking about himself. So she tells him no. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, I'm sorry. I think I want to be with somebody who like really, really cares about me.
Hang on.
He says,
very importantly, she doesn't explicitly say no out loud like that. She's like, you need somebody else. We're just not compatible like that. And like, you need somebody else. And he says to her, well, I'm still going to hold on to hope because you didn't say no.
Yeah.
sir.
And then she's like, but I think you should look for somebody better. And he's like, life isn't like those fancy books you read. Like, you just find somebody that you get along with and you're attracted to, and you settle down and you have kids, and like, that's what's done.
Listener, we have a canon romance lover character.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And she turns Hart into a romance lover.
Yes.
So then that chapter ends by saying, on this Founders Day situation, Mercy did not fight with Hart.
Not exactly.
And then we do...
Oh, shit, you're right, because those two chapters happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
You're a genius. I love you.
Thank you. So then we rewind in the next chapter to Hart's entire week, and it's just a slog. He's just heartbroken. Like, it's terrible.
Also, he's forced bureaucratically to take vacation. And so he's like, all I can think about is Mercy. And now that I'm trying not to think about Mercy, all I can think about is Bill. This fucking sucks. And he gets
my
a
dead dog,
letter.
Gracie.
Yeah, he goes and visits Gracie's grave. Oh, and then he can't stop thinking about Mercy, and he gets a letter from her, and it's basically her. She's like, I have something to tell you. My name's Mercy Birdsall. And then she just lays it all out. And she says to him, forgive me if this sounds cruel or harsh or demanding, but if you can't bring yourself to tell me your name or to show your true self to me, please don't write back. Because anything less isn't true friendship. P.S. I miss you.
I miss you.
And he misses her too. And so he's like, he starts to write a letter and he's like, this isn't enough. I'm going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the day of the festival. He gets to Eternity and he's going to try and find her. And now there's a drudge attack on the town for the first time in like 15 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when he gets there, he sees the drudge going at Mercy. And then he shoots it successfully, but he's panicked. And so he goes and like gets her and he's holding her face.
Yeah.
And he's like, he sobs out her name.
And then he
like,
says, did it hurt you? Did it hurt you?
And like, she shakes her head, and then he's like, it's okay, and reassuring her.
And he hugs her.
And then Nathan shows up.
Yeah.
And he's all handsy on her. And he's like, you go do your fucking job, and I'm going to go take care of her. And so he gets her inside, and he's so jealous about that deputy that he saw all over her. And he makes her a special drink, and he's like, okay, I'm going to get out of your hair now that I've taken care of you as much as I can, basically. And he sees in her eyes for the first time not hate.
Yeah.
Oh.
And she is so confused. She's obviously in shock from almost being attacked to death by a drudge. She's also like now fully understanding what his job entails in a way that she couldn't fathom before. So they end up convincing her to go to the Founders Day party.
Hang the flip-flop fuck on Melody goddamn Carlisle.
Yes.
This man goes to the bathroom, and very importantly, he washes his face and then wipes it down with a hand towel and is afraid to he keeps it there longer than necessary because he already knew what he would see in his reflection in the mirror over the sink.
Yeah.
He hung the towel on its peg anyway and looked himself in the eye. There it was, a truth so evident that it may as well have been painted on his forehead in red letters. He was helplessly, boundlessly, stupidly in love with Mercy Birdsall.
Uh-huh. But the best part about that is actually what happens right before. Because he thinks to himself, I'm going to go and see Mercy. And as he's like walking out the door, he has to stop in his tracks and run to the bathroom so that he can puke because of this realization.
Mm-hmm.
He pukes and then he's like doing everything to the sink and realizes... And just the fact that being in love is vomit inducing for him is so charming.
It's so much feeling for him.
He's so nervous. He's so nervous. So he ends up going to the Founders Day party because he just wants to talk to her. And like they both get bombarded by people wanting to hear tales about whatever. Finally, she gets away and he follows her and they like sit down next to each other. And she realizes that she wanted to be alone, but the only person that she would not want to be alone for is Hart. And like, that's a weird thing. And so they start talking and she's like, what are you doing? Why are you being so nice to me? And he's like, actually, I think maybe the question we should be asking ourselves is like, why were we so mean to each other in the first place? And then tell them.
So then he apologizes to her. He's like, I was coming to see you. And she's like, to drop off a body? And he's like, no, I wanted to apologize for that night at the Little Wren Cafe. I was an ass to you and I'm sorry. And I was an ass to you the last time I dropped off a body and most of the times before that too. So I apologize for all of it. And she is flabbergasted because, oh my God, a man, or like in person generally, but a man, this man apologizing without any but. Oh, wow.
And without any ulterior motives. He doesn't want anything from her. He's not asking her for something after that.
And then he says to her, cha-ching! Listener, just so you know, that's the sound of a check being cashed. Cha-ching! Would you like to dance? You want to dance? Yep. With me? If you want to. Who are you and what have you done with my heartache?
And he says, I guess that's a no. And he's like, you know, his boots in the dirt and he's really awkward about it. And she's like, she touches him and she's like, no, that was a yes. That was a definite. And it says because she's not going to give up the opportunity to dance with somebody who's taller than her.
Oh my God, I have never felt more seen. I would dance with literally my least favorite person in the world if they were taller than me. And I would have a great fucking time about it. And then while they're dancing, she's like, you're a good dancer. And he's like, surprised. And she says, very. And he says, maybe there are some things you don't know about me, merciless. And then she says, am I crazy? Are we having fun right now? And he's like, I'm not really the fun type. And she says, the jury is still out on that. And then she says, would it be inappropriate of me to thank you for being taller than I am? And he says, not at all. Thank you for being something specifically, this is very important, something resembling a laugh escaped his mouth. Not at all. Thank you for being tall enough for me to dance with you on my feet rather than on my knees. And she's like, was that a joke?
Are you joking?
And he's like, probably indigestion. And she's like, or evidence of mild joy. Somebody hand me a paper bag. I'm hyperventilating from the shock of it. And he says, you're not helping your Hart Ralston is fun argument here. And then she says, prove me wrong. And his face broke into a grin so genuine and surprising that Mercy felt as if someone had shaken up a bottle of root beer and opened it inside of her in a fizzy explosion. His eyes glinting with mischief, he backed his way toward the middle of the dance floor, shaking his hips from side to side as he pulled Mercy with him.
And oh, those hips.
Oh, yep. And then he whips her out into a basket whip step. And cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah, it's so good.
And then Nathan shows up and kills the whole fucking mood.
All right, HBs, we'll be back tomorrow with the hard-won HEA of these two beautiful souls. And hopefully an HEA for all of the lost souls, too. You know, all those lost ones. Heaving Bosoms is produced by us, Melody Carlisle and Sabrina Bradley. Editing is done by me, Melody Carlisle. Our theme music is by the incredible singer-songwriter Brittany Fonts, and our art is by the ultra-talented author Kate Pryor. If you like our show, remember to follow us, especially on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Rate us 5 stars and leave a review. It seriously means so much, and it really impacts the algorithm. And of course, tell your friends about us because word of mouth is the best thing you can possibly do for a podcast. And we're hilarious, so I mean, maybe even your friends who don't read romance. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at heavingbosospodcast@gmail.com. And if you want more of us, visit patreon.com/heavingbosomspodcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Heaving Bosoms, on TikTok at Heaving_Bosoms, in our Facebook group, the Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult. We're on Threads these days. Geez, we're all over the place, and you can follow us there. You can sign up for our newsletter and get our Reading Embrace printable by going to heavingbosoms.com. All right, I'll see you tomorrow with the second part. Bye.